Hi everybody, this is TheHande and welcome to yet another HeCast. Yes, the last HeCast that I did was of course last year, which was the almost halfway look back podcast on the new adventures of He-Man. And today, yes, we are finally doing the wrap up for the 60-second He-Man reviews podcast. So I'm choosing also, you might be a little bit confused, but so I'm choosing to put this podcast out before the last 3 episodes of the 60-second He-Man reviews have come out. So there are going to be a little bit of spoilers here if you are, for some reason, watching the series at the same time as and watching the review series concurrently. So, if you don't want spoilers, you should probably stop listening right now. But basically, I just wanted to do this, I've already finished, uploaded, and scheduled the release dates for the remaining 60-second review episodes. And today, basically, I'm going to be just taking stock on on how I now feel about the new adventures of He-Man. How do I feel about that old review video that I made of the series back in 2014? I got a whole bunch of stuff here on the docket, and the docket doesn't actually have too many items because when I did this last year, when I was almost at the halfway point, and the reason I did the podcast, I had to do the podcast earlier than I had planned because the uploads of the New Adventures episodes mysteriously stopped for several weeks, and then when they finally resumed, I was too busy with work to really, start working on those again. And so, that's why after a while, I kind of got back on the horse this year. So yes, this review series has been like, 2 years in the making, technically. Like I kind of like very haphazardly did the first 3 episodes back in 2019, and then in 2020 I kickstarted this whole 60 seconds review in earnest, and it's been going well so far. Okay, so before we get to the topics, this is all still part of the introduction. There's a couple of things I want to talk about and just quickly mention at the top of the show before we get any deeper. So first of all, I don't know what it's called. Is it the community or whatever message space on YouTube that I can like post stuff on? And I sometimes do little messages of telling you about videos that are coming out in the near future. I posted links to my Twitch page over there where I had a kind of live commentary, also reacting for the first time to the episodes. 4 episodes, starting from There's Gems in Their Hills, going all the way to Blacksmith of Krelis. So, and those are going to disappear. They might have already disappeared by the time, so I'm not going to be, for obvious reasons, I'm not going to be archiving those in the Twitch. But if anything, nothing else, like, if you feel like following me on Twitch, you can do so. I don't stream very regularly. And when I do, there's basically no guarantee what it's going to be. Like, maybe it's going to be a game, or maybe it's going to be just something completely different. I am, however, planning on maybe streaming a couple of more live commentaries on a couple of New Adventures episodes. I'm really thinking of doing just 2, maybe like my favorite and least favorite episodes. That would actually be pretty fun. Also, in the links, in the description for this podcast on YouTube, there's going to be a link to the WordPress page where I have all the episode ratings listed. It's on TheHande.wordpress.com. And if you go under, I think it's under Stuff, if you look at the headings. But anyway, I'm going to link it directly there. So if you want to, just a quick overview of all the different ratings that I've given to all the episodes, those are there. I decided that it would be actually helpful for other people to also be able to see the ratings. It's weird that it only occurred to me. This only occurred to me during the break between 2020 and 2021 when I finally returned to the series. It's weird to me that it just did not occur to me. Also, A little while ago, I also made a best of. I've kind of made two best of collections of the 60-second He-Man reviews. I did, first of all, just a general best of all the funniest parts and the most the repeated gripes I have with episodes. That was on this channel. So and there is going to be a part 2. Yes, I am working on it. But I'm obviously going to wait until all the 60-second He-Man reviews have come out before I put it out officially. But that one isn't also coming. And then finally at the end here, and the other video, that's on my second channel, is the title card gag collection. So all the different times when I didn't use the "I have the power" yell from Gary Chalk in the intro card. That's going to be that has its own little video on my second channel, which is now called TheHande Let's Plays and stuff. So if you want to go check it out and, maybe check out some of my Let's Plays, that's on my second channel. And finally, before we finally get into the meat of this podcast, I will say, of course, that I'm recording this a couple of days before Kevin Smith's new He-Man Netflix cartoon show is coming online. And I was planning originally to watch it on the day. So a couple of people have been asking about it. Yes, I know the new Netflix He-Man show is coming. I talked about it on a podcast like 2 years ago already, and last year actually on a stream, which is also, it was one of the Jill of the Jungle ones. I've posted shortened versions of those on my second channel as well. But unfortunately, for reasons, unfortunately, I will not be able to see it probably until next week at the earliest. And I will bring you I will definitely bring a dedicated HeCast update on that once I've seen it. All right, but that is all of the extra stuff out of the way. Let's finally move on to the docket, and let's talk about something which is kind of an important thing to consider here. But yeah. So, I've mentioned before, on a previous podcast actually, I said that I had the veil taken off my eyes a little bit regarding to New Adventures of He-Man, because in my original review video, I originally had kind of made out New Adventures of He-Man to be a more plot-driven series, a series that has an ongoing storyline. And it sort of does, but then when I was doing that review series, I kind of came to the realization, well, actually, there are a lot of one-off episodes, way more than story-driven. There are certain segments of the episodes that are clearly tied by a sort of plot thread. So the first 7 episodes, for instance, do constitute their own little story arc. The Mutant Occupation story arc, episodes 11 through 15, obviously constitute another one. But then, starting from episode 53 until the end of the series, we have a different set, which is when the Mites and the Gleenons are introduced, when Skeletor loses his helmet. So there are these story arcs, but they definitely made a lot more just one-off stories. And even when I refer to those as story arcs, even in those first 7 episodes, and definitely even during the last, I don't know how many episodes, going up until the series finale, we're definitely seeing that there are just these one-offy little storylines out there. So in some ways, the series kind of returned to being more story-driven towards the end of the series. But something that is also, unfortunately kind of obvious, if you watched all the different reviews when I resumed the series, I think it started with HeCast, didn't it? Yes, yeah, HeCast. Is that the latter half of the New Adventures of He-Man has definitely been less spectacular than the first half. Like, generally, if you look at the ratings, you will notice that there really has not, that since Sword and Stab, actually, yeah. Oh, sorry, no, since Klaus-No Schmosh-Nost, Klaus-No there hasn't been a single episode that I rated with a full 3 grayskulls out of 3, but I'll get back to that, the ratings, in a later part of the podcast. But now I really just wanted to talk about that final story arc. And the final story arc, I'm really talking about the final 6 episodes. You could count the Mite-Gleenon Story Arc, but I'm going to talk about that later on. And I have to say, the series-ending story arc, the game's story arc, was easily and by far the most disappointing. It finally ended well, the final episode, of course, the final invasion was actually pretty good. Like, you know, they did manage to bring the series to a close to some extent, but it was very, very rough going in, especially because the games. I mean, you know, the Call to the Games, Blacksmith of Krails, and Time to Leave, none of them were like excellent episodes. I think the Call to the Games was the most entertaining, but even that really, I'm really talking about the first half of the episode. So I was expecting when I made those live, the live reactions to those, I was really thinking, well, this is surely as bad as it can get. It can't possibly like get worse after this. And then I watched the games, and it is goddamn fucking amateur hour on New Adventures of He-Man. Like, what the hell was that episode? Seriously, like, once you see the review, you will see what the hell I'm talking about. But the most ineptly animated episode. Like, yes, another thing that happened during the second half, I started to notice that there are episodes, of course, in the first half where the animation quality dipped a little bit. Usually it was like, one part of the episode was kind of badly drawn or something, but it started to become more consistent. The insufficiencies of the animation department were becoming more and more consistent throughout the second season, and it was the second half of the series. And it was really annoying, especially for episodes like the robot episode. What was it called? Slaves of the Machine, yes. Because that was actually an episode with a very, very good plot. And if the animation was if it had been at least like decently good, I could have given it... that episode came close to having like 3 Grayskulls out of 3. That was a legit good episode. But it's like somehow the quality just kept getting a bit like, it went down the drain a little bit. But we didn't have like too many, maybe animation errors once in a while. Something like the Fear Gas episode. What the hell was that called? I'm blanking out on all these episode names. Oh god, I made a 60-second. Plague on Primus, yes, that's the one. Yes, on Plague on Primus, like we had generous like animation errors or just like awkward animation, but nothing on the level of the games. The games was in a complete league of its own. This is like, this is an episode where there's clearly like just animation elements missing. Like the whole episode has this rough, unfinished quality to it. And the worst part of all, probably the most infuriating thing of all, was that smudge on the fucking camera that's there through the whole episode. Like, how did you not fix that? How? And, it does begin to feel like the showrunners were kind of getting burned out towards the end of this series. Because, of course, one of the things that on my original in the 2014 series review of the series, I incorrectly for some reason said that there were 2 seasons of this show, but no, it's just one long season of 65 episodes. In other words, it's the same length as both of the seasons were in the Filmation He-Man, and the reason they made such a ridiculously high amount of episodes was because this was meant for syndication, which meant that it would basically be in reruns, constantly in reruns for the next couple of years, which it ended up indeed being that, because, of course, I think it even says in the Wikipedia article for New Adventures that the toy line was unceremoniously retired in the middle of 1992, which is sad. So it is fascinating. It is bizarre. I'd love to be the fly on the wall to see a Jedlug who had to look at that games episode and decided to just let it go, because I got the impression that was supposed to be kind of the whole crux of that particular story arc. Because with the Mite-Gleenon Story Arc, yes, that one started badly. Like the first couple of episodes were not very good, but it then eventually it peaked in the Queen's Gambit, like where they finally sold the stakes. It felt grandiose, gigantic. It did have a little bit of a Lord of the Rings problem, like you might have seen in the episode review, that there were a lot of troop movements, but it worked as intended. You got the sense of that this is important, this is a big deal. You don't get that feeling in the games. The games felt like such a fucking, even if the episode, and I gotta be honest, the episode idea was just not very good. Like, just these aliens pitting the heroes and villains against each other, as if they weren't doing that already. There was an interesting plot element to it that eventually kind of leads into the final 2 episodes where, was it Malum? Malum and Roika. Roika is the other one with the growly voice, but I honestly forget what the other guy's called half the time. So, where they intended to keep the champion of the games prisoners on their planet forever, and that was a big plot point in the final invasion. I didn't really get into it in the episode review, which I'm sorry to say. But also, I have to say, on these last couple of episode reviews, I was very intent on not making another 60-plus second He-Man review because I knew I was going to be doing this podcast after I was finished. So Tornado Zill ended up being the final one, and it is unfortunate that for those episodes, that get the 60-plus seconds treatment, that usually those episodes are just not very good. I think the only one that was any good that I mentioned was Council of Clones, yeah. So, because that was a good episode that was kind of somewhat hamstrung, ruined a little bit by slightly awkward animation, even though the animation was actually really high quality as well. It was a very weird feeling. So, and how does the series finally end? The series ends with a fight between He-Man, Skeletor, Krita, and Mara, which is cool. I don't know, and I said this in this episode review, I don't know why Skeletor pulled Mara along. I think he would have had a much better time fighting He-Man, or he would have made a much better impact. I mean, I guess it was nice that they gave Mara a little shot, because the final invasion finally kind of like, in my view, redeemed the whole Mite-Gleenon Story Arc retroactively by stating that Krita is bringing the Gleenons to help out with the invasion of Primus, and Mara obviously comes in to help her friends. But it felt really weird. It felt very, very kind of forced, even though, like, the final fight was actually pretty good. Like, I hate complaining about it because this is exactly what I would want to see, but I really wish they could have found a more organic way of doing it, and not just like, oh, Skelly just for shits and giggles. Because I get he hates He-Man, and I get that Skelly maybe has some grudges against Mara, but it felt really, really, really artificial. And then He-Man banishes Krita and Skeletor into space indefinitely, which is not a very He-Man thing to do. Like, it's weird. It is, closing the door a little bit, but it is obvious, like, with Skeletor's, like, postulating at the end of the episode when they're stuck in the spaceship together, which I don't know what he's complaining about. If I was stuck with anybody on a spaceship, I would rather that it would be Krita. But it still is kind of weird. Like, why, He-Man? Why did you have to throw them into space? Was that really necessary? But at least the fact that they recognize and they close out the whole conflict, that Flog formally, surrenders and everything. Like, that was actually pretty good. Now, do I think they could have followed this up with a second season? Absolutely, they could have. Like, the main thing, and this is where we get now a little bit into the territory of how I feel about that old review video of mine. So, here's the thing. My review of the New Adventures of He-Man, which I was forced to take down at one point, and it's been re-uploaded on my second channel. It's in the playlists. He-Man Top 10s and other... No. It is in the He-Man episode reviews playlist, I think. But you need to remember that when I did that video back in 2014, I was doing a very, very superficial overlook. I watched roughly around 10-ish episodes from all across the series to try to get at least kind of a feel for the thing. And I did watch the final episode. I definitely watched the final invasion. I just didn't remember it. Like, it's been so long since I last saw any of the episodes that I watched for that review that I frankly kind of just forgot about all of them. Like, I know I watched a bunch, but it's weird that I just don't remember any real details. Mostly, I remember the first episode, and the first episode actually still is one of my favorites overall. So you might have heard from my descriptions, like some of the things have been consistent. You've noticed that I already liked the mutants back in 2014, and that's true. I liked Hydron and Flipshot already from the beginning, and that's not a surprise because they've been there from the get-go. And in the Tornadoes of Zill 60 Plus review, I already talked about this. Like, the Galactic Guardians were one of the biggest gripes, but overall, I have grown definitely way more affection towards this series from watching it all the way from the beginning. Like, yes, there's a lot of either lackluster or mediocre episodes. That's what you get, unfortunately, with shows that are trying to hit a certain number of episodes rather than trying to hit a certain quality of episodes. But there's definitely potential here. There's a lot of fun, really fun, goofy episodes, and I've had a really, really good time watching it, and I've gotten way more invested in most of the characters. It's funny because I remember even right up to the halfway point of the series, or the roughly almost halfway point when I did the previous podcast on this. Like, I think I still didn't remember most of the characters' names. Like, I didn't remember Segatar's name for the longest time. Artella's, yes, because I made jokes about Artella. And Spinwit was really funny because Spinwit, after the break, started appearing in the episodes, and before that I had called Spinwit like a wimpy Flipshot, and then actually he started to become kind of a cool character, like, and even like, you know, going all the way to the games where, let's forget Tornadoes of Zill, like all the way to the games where he was really the best part of that episode, which did not really do anything to save. In case you haven't watched the review, I'm already going to say it, the games was the third episode of the series to get half a Grayskull out of 3, which is the lowest actual rating. He-Man Mutant didn't get a rating because it's a special kind. I'm going to talk about the ratings just momentarily. So, in hindsight, I think my review of that series is a little harsh. The same way I feel about my first, the She-Ra episode review, because... And for She-Ra, I feel... That's even weirder, because for She-Ra, I had definitely watched... When I did the review series, I definitely watched like at least 1/5, maybe even a quarter of all the She-Ra episodes. But it's weird that I had just somehow... well, this kind of happens. If you just randomly pick episodes to watch for a review, you're not going to get the whole picture. And unfortunately, with She-Ra especially, I just kind of kept missing all the really good ones. So that's the thing. That's why I waited until we had watched with my sister the entirety of She-Ra Princess of Power before I finally decided to do the top 10 She-Ra episodes, and also the bottom 10, because I did that last year. Yeah, okay. So, basically, whatever I say in the, whatever I said, whatever I didn't mean it. No. No, I didn't mean it, but now, in hindsight, maybe take that review video with a grain of salt, and really just, now my thoughts on every single one of the episodes is laid bare. Which brings us to another thing. I said, of course, that the last episode of the New Adventures of He-Man, that to get a full 3 Grayskulls out of 3 was Glasnost Schmashnost. And after that, Battle for Leviton, which was the final episode of the Mutant Occupation Story Arc, didn't get a full 3 Grayskulls out of 3, but I did give it 2.5. And then we had to wait for a very long time. We had to wait until The Bride of Sludgehead to get another 2.5, which I think is already like a really good indication of just how much the episode quality diverged. Like, okay, yes, we did have 1 Grayskull episodes already in the first half of the episode, but then every other episode was like 1 Grayskull, 2 Grayskulls, 1 Grayskull, 2 Grayskulls. Not many 1.5s. Like it was always the episodes where I was a little hesitant to say that I actually fully enjoyed the episode. Like, there were things I liked about the episode, but then there were lots of things like going against them. So in hindsight, when I'm thinking about these, were some of my episode ratings a little bit harsh? And in hindsight, yeah, I do think a few of the ratings were. Okay, sorry. I completely forgot that I've given 4 episodes half a Grayskull. I forgot about one. No, 5. I've given 5 episodes half a Grayskull out of... And, the thing to remember about this, of course, is that my ratings, just like any ratings, really are just completely arbitrary and completely based on my mood. That was the other reason why I took a break from doing the reviews, because I wanted to be in a good headspace when reviewing these episodes, so I wouldn't do it so harshly. But even so, it does seem like some of it did come across. Like, okay, a good example. Okay, one episode that I actually liked a lot, but I ended up giving kind of a low rating was 4 Ways Till Sundown, which was when I watched it the second time with my sister and her husband, I was just we were all laughing, just in uproarious laughter at that episode because it was that funny. It was really, and I think I unfairly weighed Flipshot and Hydrant's story against the rating. Like, I think that episode really should have deserved 2 Gray Skulls, maybe even 2.5 Gray Skulls, because it really is. It is one of the standout episodes of the second half of the series, just because it is so goddamn stupid. He-Fan was another episode I actually really, really liked. It was especially because my expectations for it were so low going in, and we had some episodes like Mutiny on the Mothership. That was the one that I had actually seen before. And Rock to the Future were also pretty good. I don't know, Rock to the Future maybe wouldn't deserve 3 or even 2.5 Gray Skulls, but Mutiny on the Mothership is right about there-ish, where I probably should have considered that. And, I'm about to go into the Mite-Gleenon Story Arc, but maybe Save Our City and Queen's Gambit. Queen's Gambit was definitely the best episode of that story arc, so maybe I should have just because I did think it was a better episode than Save Our City, I should have probably given it that extra half. So I do feel, even though I tried, because, the whole point, the joke kind of was that the ratings only go up to 3, was because I kind of wanted to go into this series with kind of lowered expectations, but then I actually, started really enjoying myself. I was enjoying it a lot. If you go listen to my previous podcast, you will notice that I already had a really good time and really got invested in the series as a whole. But it's also clear to me that there was definitely a divergent gap. Like, don't get me wrong, there were problems during the first half of this series as well. Like, a constant problem, which was right about the time of Fading Star, was the whole audio direction problem. That there were several episodes in a row with really, really bad audio direction. And not to say there wasn't later in the series, but it became more sporadic. Like, once in a while, an episode would have kind of bad episode direction. Really, it was the animation. The animation quality started to jump around like crazy in the later part of the series, but whereas in the first half of the series, the animation was generally like very high. Even the really dumb and kind of pointless episodes had really high animation quality, which is the other thing that was always kind of annoying to me, was the fact that, especially like with Slaves to the Machine is a perfect example, that when an episode plot was actually really good, and then the animation was just complete garbage. Heatcast was another episode that surprised me that it was actually so good, but I wouldn't say I was. I wouldn't say that I was that. Wait a minute. Oh, sorry, I was looking at the wrong part. I was looking at Collision Course. Like, did I seriously give Collision Course a full Gray Skull? But yeah, the joke was originally that, in hindsight, I should have probably just gone with a 5 skull system. But basically, it would have still been just as arbitrary. It really just came down to how I weighed those elements. Like, if the episode had 1.5 Gray Skulls, it was probably worth just watching. All right, so we've been at this for almost half an hour, or half an hour. I think I need to now move on to the Mite-Gleenon Story Arc to keep the docket going. So basically, with the ratings, take them with a grain of salt. But certainly, I do feel like maybe I was a little harsh on a couple of episodes. But not the final 6. Definitely not the final 6. Okay, but the Mite-Gleenon Story Arc. Now, this is one that I was kind of going in with, with some reservations. I remember being a little annoyed, even back in 2014 when I did that episode review, that the Mites and the Gleenons needed to be a thing in the first place for Mara to become an important character. Which is interesting, yes, by the way. So, Mara, if you don't know, this is, if you watch the Netflix She-Ra show, Mara does appear in that. She is the original She-Ra on that show, which was kind of interesting. It honestly took me a long time to realize that connection. It honestly didn't click for me when I watched She-Ra and the Princess of Power for the first time. Anyway, so and you might remember when I did There's Gems in Them Hills, which is after Queen's Gambit, how I really just highlighted the fact of just how happy I was to see Skeletor, Flogg's crew, and all these other recognizable characters from the past. I think this is the real problem with the whole Mite-Gleenon story arc, that we, for 5-ish episodes, we're suddenly forced to interact with completely new characters. Characters we have no past reference for, and it is a bit difficult to get, especially President Pell made this, whole story arc, so unbearable. Admiral Nibble is a bit annoying too, but he's very cartoonish, so I kind of found him a bit funny. And but President Pell, how the hell does that guy get to be president? Also, I don't understand why he's still there as the president of the Mites when they made Mara the queen. I don't know, the Mites and the Mites, governmental system doesn't seem to make any goddamn sense. But yeah, so, and it's basically it kind of the same problem as with the series ending story arc. The first couple of episodes, Bounds of Power and the Taking of Leviton, were just such terrible episodes. It just did such a poor job with those that they really did not set a good precedent for these, especially because BMO just got introduced completely out of the blue. We've never ever seen this character, now he suddenly shows up. And it's funny because I actually grew to like BMO a lot. You might remember There's Gems in Them Hills when he's helping out Artella. They should have started out with that. Why couldn't they have started with that character actually interacting? This is the kind of the problem overall. This is kind of where we're kind of going into the final element of what they could have done better. But one is just character introductions, just building up the characters before you start having them do anything significant, because you're not really sold on the stakes. The Queen's Gambit comes at the perfect point in that story arc, in the sense that at this point you have to be a little bit invested. Even if you don't necessarily like the Mites and the Gleaners, you have to be a little bit invested in what's going on, and then you realize, well, okay, they actually did it. They found a dramatic apex point to this story arc, and they delivered. Which is totally not what they did with the games. I'm sorry, I'm still kind of angry. I'm still kind of pissy about the games, honestly. It was that bad, honestly. And the same with the Mutant Occupation arc. The Mutant Occupation arc didn't start very good. The first episode of the Mutant Occupation arc, The Gift, that was the first 60-second He-Man review I did. A 60-plus second review, and it was because that episode was such hot garbage. And the next couple, Skeletor's Victory and He-Man in Exile weren't very good. But then by the time of Seeds of Resistance, the show had finally been brought back up to quality, and we were, and then we ended the whole story arc on a high. It is so bad. It is so weird that in the series ending 6-parter, it actually still says on my piece of paper that was a 5-parter, but that was a lie on Wikipedia that they said that the game story arc started with the Blacksmith of Kralos, because it definitely started with the Call to the Games. But basically it was just like a valley. We really hit the bottom at the middle point, and then we finally kind of came back up a little bit from that. So it wasn't all for naught. Although I will say the second to last episode, Flogg's Revenge, is the kind of same as Skeletor's Revenge from early on. That it's not Flog really getting revenge. It is, in this case, it is actually Skeletor's revenge. Same as Skeletor was not the one getting revenge in Skeletor's Revenge. That was the computer episode. That's the first one where Artella had a big role. And yeah, the thing was just not seeing familiar faces like Hydra and Flipshot, a fucking Spinwit even. I would have taken a fucking Spinwit along just to have some semblance of familiarity. And it's also weird, I'd forgotten about the fact that Mara changes. Well, I didn't forget about Mara changing her outfit, but honestly, I didn't never really like Krita's new outfit. I just like her, pink original too much, and it really felt weird. I mean, I guess because she became, a like a warrior queen to the Gleenons, but still. And that's kind of like, you know, they managed to pull a victory from the jaws of defeat, if you will, on that one, whereas it was kind of the opposite with the series-ending story, the game story arc. And well, another thing that will just says something about the slipshot equality. I talked about how I divided all these episodes. So first of all, we had the Greenhead Skelly cycle going up to episode 6, which is Sword and Staff. Then we had the One-Off Wonders, the Mutant Occupation story arc. Then we had the first Cavalcade of Crap, which was from A Crack in the World up until Skeletor's Revenge, actually. Then we had an interesting set-piece cycle. So we did have this whole bunch of, like, pretty good, not outstanding, but pretty good episodes, which I actually said went all the way up to He-Kaz. And then we had a whole bunch of, like, missed opportunities, like Slaves of the Machine, Galactic Guardians, Siege of Ceres. Like, this is exactly what I'm talking about. And Zone of Darkness. Zone of Darkness, I actually feel, that's another episode I feel I could have probably given a much higher grade for. Once Upon a Time, which was the Tila episode. And then, Plague on Primus was a piece of crap. Plague on Primus really, I think, should have been... Well, it is a missed opportunity, but then we had a Cavalcade of Crap Part 2, going from the Test of Time all the way to Guns of Nordor. Like, really few, like, the Four Ways to Sundown and He-Fan were really the high points of that particular run of episodes, because we had shit like the new Wizard in Town. That's another half, so there's not like 6 episodes with half Grey Skulls. Man, we had a lot of bad episodes, didn't we, in this second half. So this is what I'm talking about. So with the Mite-Gleenon Story Arc, I think in hindsight, it was not the worst story arc, definitely. I mean, debatably, you could say the Greenhead Skelly story arc is, because it has episodes like The Quest for the Crystals, Attack on Honor, you know, The Ultimate Challenge, which isn't a bad episode, but it's a very confusing one. I don't really, that's always one that I've always had very mixed feelings on. Alright, but we're getting towards the end here, so let's now bring up another little topic, which is, what are my top 3 and bottom 3 episodes of the New Adventures of He-Man? Well, I've already talked about, I am planning maybe to do a full top 10 at some point, but I've been so deep into New Adventures just recently that I might just take a little breather away from it, because I really want to do something else as well. I mean, this has never been, but I just need to remind people that this is not a He-Man channel. I just like He-Man a lot, so that's why I do a lot of He-Man videos. Okay, so what are my favorite episodes? And I think top 3, if we don't count The New Beginning, which is a good episode, I think that would be at least in the top 4. It's easily probably Sword and Staff, Glasnost, Schmoshnost, and Bride of Sludgehead. And Glasnost, Schmoshnost is just... That's an episode that I think managed to marry the goofy side of this series with the serious side. Like, it starts off really funny, but there's actual lore in place to kind of justify all the silliness that happens. And then Skeletor nearly wins at the end, which is also... That's something that stopped happening as well. Like, Skelly got very close to winning a lot at the start of the series, and towards the end it's like, nope, not even close. Like, you know... Which is weird. That feels weird. But Glasnost Moshnost was just such an awesome, good episode. Yeah, Battle for Leviton, I guess I feel kind of mixed on that, because we didn't really get a good, big final battle for that one. But that was still a good episode, don't get me wrong. Oh yeah, it had the He-Man with the infiltration. That's a good one, yeah. But yeah, I think my top 3 would probably be number 1, Glasnost Moshnost, and then it's a toss-up between Sword and Staff and Bride of Slushhead. And I think Sword and Staff really does deserve to be the second best, because that's when we have, that's still like the outstanding He-Man Skeletor fight, and you know, so and you know, it was when Skeletor made his big transformation. It's like it's one of the last episodes. Well, not the last episode, but it's one of the first episodes that had something like plot significant happen and was actually a good episode as well. All right, bottom 3. As it turns out, I have a bigger pool for this than I anticipated. So what episodes have I given half a Grey Skull? So Attack on Honor was the first one. That was garbage. But it's kind of boring garbage. Like, I think in hindsight, it maybe isn't as bad as some of these other ones. Because, well, the He-Man Mutant I never gave a rating for. There's a good argument to be made that He-Man Mutant might debatably be the worst episode of the series. But it's a special kind of bad because it's so bad it flips around into becoming very entertaining. So that's why I never felt comfortable giving it a rating. But Collision Course, that's the first good candidate for the top 3, because that episode's plot scenario made absolutely no sense. It's a garbage episode. The Children's Planet, I think, is possibly, but I think it still beaten out by New Wizard in Town. So Collision Course and New Wizard in Town are the top candidates for the bottom 3, and yeah, Taking of Leviton is on the same level, really, as Attack on Honor. It's a bad episode, but it's kind of a boring bad episode. And Tornadoes of Zil, that got my piss to a boil, because that's a perfect example of what's wrong. It started with, Skeletor's helmet period. It started with Sword and Staff and ended with him getting his head stuck in some fucking gears in the Tornadoes of Zil. No, but the games are definitely the other half a Grayskull contenders. So which one is the worst? I find myself in the same conundrum every time I think about, is the Royal Cousin or The Good Shall Survive really the worst episode of the Filmation He-Man show? Because there's a good argument to be made for both. And the Royal Cousin is just like from just a conceptual level onward. It's an episode focusing on Adam's annoying cousin. That's the reason I hate that episode. It has a bad plot setup, so there's nothing to redeem it. There's nothing the episode could have possibly done, in my view, to redeem that story setup. Even if it was really well animated, I still think it would be one of my least favorite episodes. And the Good Shall Survive at least has a promising premise that is ruined by terrible execution and direction and animation and writing. You might remember the writer Richard Partey was number 1 on my bottom 5 He-Man episodes list. Oh yeah, and one of these guys, I think it's J. Bryn Stevens was the one who wrote Collision Course, and he also made my bottom 10 He-Man episode writers. So he has some blood on his hands. He's done bad episodes for both shows. Okay, so the games. I don't like the plot setup, but it makes a bit of sense. There's not, plot logic-wise, there's nothing wrong with the games. It's just a bad idea, but it's not like an insurmountably bad idea. It's the animation. The animation is hot garbage. New Wizard in Town is a good candidate because the plot there's no rhyme or reason. Sabrian just invites these wizards over to Primus for a conference or some shit. They never really explain what it was about. And then we had Rambling, who's this one-off terrible villain. That's the reason I don't like Children's Planet. But the Children's Planet, again, I understand what's going on. I understand the stakes. Maxus wants to take over Primus. That's why he's getting the gas from the ice planet. I don't understand Rambling. He tries to conquer the universe, but I don't understand why Sabrian knows him or why he invites him over there. I don't know why he invites any of the wizards. They're all a bunch of assholes. So it's a perplexing episode that has no rhyme or reason. But I think it takes the number 3 spot. So it comes down to a toss up between the games and Collision Course. The thing with Collision Course is that Skeletor is trying to destroy Primus as opposed to trying to conquer it. And Flog doesn't try to stop him. Which is, it's probably symptomatic that in this episode he happened to misplace his brain again. But usually, we understand that the stakes, what's at stake in the New Adventures of He-Man? Well, Skelly wants to defeat He-Man in one-on-one combat, maybe even kill him. That's not unheard of. But it's like trying to kill a fly with a sledgehammer kind of thing. Trying to blast Primus out of its orbit. That's the whole thing with the Collision Course. And, it just doesn't make any sense. Sometimes the characters will do stuff that's either out of character for them or doesn't make any sense. Like, Skelly gets completely lost in, his own idiocy from time to time in the show. But whatever, it's it's usually for the benefit that we just gotta keep the episode going. We don't have time to stop and explain Skeletor's trail of thought in this particular instance. That's a tough one. That is a tough one. You know what? I still want to give this one to Collision Course, just because it just hurts my brain to stop and think about, why was Skelly doing that again? Just to get He-Man? Kill everyone on Primus? So why didn't Flog stop him? That's the thing. It conflicts with too many in-lore elements of the show. That's why it's the worst episode. Whereas The Games is the worst animated show episode of the series. I mean, that's a special honor it deserves all on its own. Okay, so we are finally at the end of the podcast. Alright, so the last item on the docket is, was there something that the New Adventures of He-Man could have done better? Well, yes, I already talked about this in the Tornadoes of Zil episode review, and the main thing is, like, the New Adventures of He-Man. Okay, the New Adventures of He-Man is a lot like She-Ra, Princess of Power, in two very disappointing ways. Number one is that they never really managed to nail down a good core cast of characters, but rather treated the supporting cast as interchangeable, just like on She-Ra. And in too many episodes, He-Man's sword just does something magical to save the day, just like She-Ra. But there were definitely characters that I grew to like over time. Like even Kaz. Even Kaz, despite him being how much I bitch about him, like, I thought he was a fun character. I actually would have wanted to have seen Drissy a little bit more. She just kind of disappeared during the second half of the series. Mara got her time in the sun. Hydron and Flipshot were great. And, I did grow to like characters like Artella and Segatar and Spinwit, especially Spinwit. Spinwit surprisingly got a lot of character development over time. I wish they would have done that, but like I said, this is the thing that I said in the Zil review. Really wish they would have spent the first 7 episodes setting up those characters, rather than just having random battles with the mutants. Because I think that's the thing that always makes this show kind of difficult for people to get into, because you don't know who the characters really are. You don't really know what's their dealio. Except for Hydron and Flipshot. You always know who those guys are, and that's why they're always my favorite characters. Even when they're being idiots and assholes to each other, they're still fun characters. And the mutants always, like, the mutants actually had way better introductory episodes most of the time. Like, that's the thing. Like, they got fleshed out already in the first 20 or so episodes, I should even say. Yeah. So that's the other thing. The other thing that I really think they could have maybe, the show could really just use fewer. Even though these days I'm more of a fan of one-off storylines, if they could have at least married the kind of silly elements more successfully with the more serious ones, that would have worked out great. Because one of the things about New Adventures of He-Man, and this is something I did start to notice towards the end of this series, was that He-Man started to get very hammy and very pontificating about the power of the good and the way of the magic. I said this before. One of the really frustrating things about the show was how the characters always act so enlightened, like they know better, when in fact, like, the morality depth of the show is really no deeper than the original Filmation show. The good guys are good guys, bad guys are bad guys. That end of story. Except for Bride of Slushhead, when Slushhead was being very nice to the heroes. Like, that's the thing that that's something that I did respond well to. That's something that I really liked. So maybe they should have focused more on just story arcs. But, some of my favorite episodes are still the one-offy types. So maybe it's just the tone issue. I did mention this. And the thing is, the more sillier the episodes were, I tended to enjoy them a lot more. Because when they were very serious, and when we were staring at, like, the nth fucking space battle, you kind of lost your place. You kind of lost, like, where are we exactly, and what are we doing? So that was the other thing. Like, they would usually have one really good plot device, like sometimes just a literal device that Skeletor was using, or a magical artifact or something that was at the crux of the episode. But one of the annoying things about this is that at some point you were almost certain that He-Man was just going to yell, "I have the power," and use backlighting to fix everything. So that was always very, very frustrating about this show. So that's the other thing. They really should have just focused on giving all the... That's another way they could have built up the characters. Just have them participate in the resolution rather than just having He-Man wave a magic wand and solve everything. So that's one other thing that they could have done better. Because, you know, like I said, most of the cast I liked. I think they just weren't always utilized the best possible way. And then the production issues. Yes, like... and it's unfortunate for this era of cartoons, the late 80s, early 90s. American studios using foreign outsourced studios. They clearly, jet lag didn't communicate, you know, certain minimum quality requirements. Like in some episodes, it's painfully obvious that the studio mentality was, we don't need it good, we need it by Friday. So that's the other thing. Like as much as, you know, and I mentioned this in the last podcast as well, as much as there is, you know, some dodgy animation on the Filmation He-Man show, you know, it's still in some ways more consistent than when they make like big mistakes in these foreign animation studios, and they clearly just didn't care about fixing it. Like, that's the thing. But yeah, like I said, I still really enjoyed the show, had a lot of fun with it, and it's really nice to now having watched all the episodes of the New Adventures of He-Man. That makes this, that makes this my fourth He-Man series that I've watched from start to finish now, which is, you know, the original He-Man, the original She-Ra, the Netflix She-Ra, and now this. Yeah. So, that is it. I hope you enjoyed this whole rambly He-Cast, and if you have for some reason not watched the 60-second He-Man reviews, please go check them out. There's a full playlist on this channel that you can just, you know, you can binge them all if you want for some reason. I'm TheHande, and until next time, I have the power, so can you.